Probably my biggest pet peeve is actually the wrong voice for the brand. I think you should think about a voice as much as you think about what a font says for your brand, right? That
Yeah.
is who you're picking. That is the personality you're picking. The other day, I went to a website and they had an explainer video. I clicked on it. I clicked off within like seconds because the voice was so annoying. And that's a shame, right?
Welcome to Notes from Video Village, where marketers share their thoughts and insights on everything video, from content strategy to budgets to their experiences producing broadcast commercials, internal videos, social media reels, and everything in between. I'm your host, Dan Lichtenberg, and today I'm excited to speak with Becky Hobbs, who's a co-founder and COO of O'Larry. Becky has been a marketing leader for decades and has led marketing at several early stage tech startups. I first worked with Becky when she was the VP of marketing at Doma. Her attention to detail and really the way she rolls up her sleeves and gets involved in projects really impressed me. I'm excited to sit down and have this conversation with Becky. Let's get into it. Okay, so thanks, Becky, for joining us on our Notes from Video Village series. First, just tell us your name, your title, where you work, and a little bit about your background.
I'm Becky Hobbs. I'm COO of O'Larry, which is a bespoke tech-enabled startup focused in the tax space. And my background is really in looking at different tech industries and how we can revolutionize them. Spent the last 20 years working for different startups, starting off with Monster. Joining Monster was a point for me where I realized, hey, you don't just have to work for a company, you can really work for a company that changes the way that things are fundamentally done. So on from there, worked in many different industries, but all tech focused and all SaaS.
Nice. So we first started working with you, I believe, when you were a VP of marketing at State's Title, and then it was rebranded to Doma. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah. So States Title was a really interesting company in that they were focused on title insurance, which is something a lot of people don't even think about. It's like one of those extra costs that you suddenly have to pay at closing when you buy a house. And looking at how do you really make that true insurance instead of what it generally is, which is a warranty. When I first started working with them, they were just sort of around, I want to say 25 people in an office in San Francisco. And then they did something a little bit crazy. They purchased the eighth largest title company in the US and went to over 1,000 people overnight, just with different local offices in multiple places. So the interesting thing from a marketing point of view is we really had a wealth of different types of audiences. We had a B2C audience thinking about the consumer and really thinking about selling to a real estate and loan officer. And then we had this really heavy B2B, really enterprise level selling to some of the largest mortgage lenders in the US. So it really required really differentiated strategies on each of those ends.
You mentioned that now you're a COO. So it sounds like you're kind of a multidisciplinary business person. I know you from your marketing
Yes.
background. How did you get into marketing? And then how did you then transition to doing operations?
Yeah, I always say I'm a little bit of a jack of all trade, master of none. I kind of fell into being marketing. If anything, I would say I've always been more heavily product. So I've always said I'm a product marketer, heavy on the product. And product marketers, from a marketing point of view, go in and out of trend, especially in the early stage startup world. A lot of the time, I would say you go back 5, 8 years ago, everybody wanted demand gen. We have to drive demand gen. And then they realized, wow, if we don't have product marketing, we don't understand our customer and what our customer needs are, all the demand gen is just throwing money away. So I think there's been a swing between the two of them. For me personally, I started off really focusing more on that product build, product manager side, but that also requires understanding really what is that full funnel. So I was working at Bold and thinking about how do we build the product, but it's really a fly trap, right? How do we bring people in and convert them? And on from there, I just moved and ended up in a marketing team and kind of ended up going up the marketing route as opposed to up the product route. In my last role for Brace, I was responsible for both product and marketing. So I've kind of come back round full circle.
What was the first time you remember making a video, whether it was in a product role or a marketing role?
Yeah, I'd say the first time I distinctly remember, and I know it wasn't the first one I made, but the one that always stands out to me the most was actually a customer with a K. So I came in as the first head of marketing for that team, and they were really early stage. And when you first have that seed stage company, they maybe have like three customers, and it doesn't matter who they are, you've really got to make the most out of those three customers. So we needed to have a customer testimonial. And their one customer, who was this massive advocate, was based in the middle of nowhere in Alabama. He was like this coder. And we said, "Will you do a testimonial video for us?" He said, "Sure." We said, "Is there any way can you do it on your phone? What can you do?" He goes, "My brother has a camera." So his brother comes, sends it over to us. And honestly, the editing that we did on it was pretty light. I think what stands out to me was the fact that in any normal circumstance, you probably would have stepped back and said, this is not our target audience. We probably shouldn't do this, right? Oh, if we are going to do it, we probably need to have a high cost for production, etc. And instead, we just got it done. And honestly, because he was such an advocate, it really shone through. And it was really something that really helped kick off a customer. And we utilized it in a lot of campaigns.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell me what is customer with a K? What did they do?
Yes. So Customer is a customer support platform. They focused very much more on technology, so supporting things like Rent the Runway, Slice, etc. When you're first starting up, you want to look at how do I use every possible piece of content that I can, and how do I create content?
And a B2B company, customer testimonials tend to be like one of the first assets you want because you're
Yeah.
talking to like a somewhat skeptical audience. It's all about authenticity, right?
100%. And I think that was the thing. A lot of the time you can hold yourself back from doing stuff because you think about, oh, well, the quality is not going to be there. Is it going to represent my brand, etc. And at the end of the day, like you say, somebody who is really excited about your brand, they're going to represent it the best way possible anyway.
What are some other videos that you remember in your career? Any big lessons?
I would actually say probably one which I was surprised was a fail was an explainer video I did for my last company that we actually had on the website. One, it was an explainer video, so I wanted to very quickly get the idea across of what the product did. And secondly, just drive some of that brand. And we were dealing with loss mitigation. So it's something that's a really emotive subject. You don't want people to lose their home, but it didn't have the bite that I would want to see there. I was trying to do 2 different things in one video. I was trying to do brand and do an explainer of the product, and I don't think you can do that. I think you have to do one or the other. And secondly, I think it was too long. I would always err on, especially in the era of TikTok, like, it's better to have something short and punchy that people are gonna watch for 20, 30 seconds than it is to think, "Hey, should I be taking this to 3 minutes and including too many different things?"
Yeah. Anything else that you feel like other videos you've made that you've learned lessons?
One I can think of, which I know worked with you guys on, was actually during COVID, where we did a customer success video. The fact that we really wanted to get a testimonial, this was from the CEO of a national mortgage company. Obviously, during COVID, we had to have additional precautions. We couldn't have a camera crew out there, so we were really reliant on him videoing everything and setting that up and making sure that it was right. And I know you guys were amazing in shipping out that equipment to him, making sure it all worked for him. At the end of the day, it was a powerful video because he was an advocate. It didn't matter that he wasn't in a studio, that we weren't using B-roll, like all of these additional pieces for the time and the climate that it was. So just back to that idea of like, if you are thinking about doing something like that, do it.
Totally. Do you have any video pet peeves that you see other companies doing that you think is just like not effective or even just like annoying?
Probably my biggest one is actually the wrong voice for the brand. I get annoyed by the generic voice that people will tend to use, and I think you should think about a voice as much as you think about what a font says for your brand, right? That
Yeah.
is who you're picking. That is the personality you're picking. The other day, I went to a website and they had an explainer video. I clicked on it. I clicked off within like seconds because the voice was so annoying. And that's a shame, right? That's a big miss. So that's probably my biggest complaint, other than just too long, really, when it's is a pet peeve.
Yeah. Actually, another client of ours said what he's doing now with a lot of his marketing is he's just like, forget hiring professionals. I'm just finding the SME, the subject matter expert at my company that can really talk. And,
Yes.
and that's the person I'm making content with now.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back to the level of confidence, right? If you are a SME, you're confident about what you're talking about, and that will come across as well. When you see, a lot of these videos that end up being done by the marketing team, it will be more stilted because you can see them reading from that script as opposed to being comfortable just context switching around different pieces.
Yeah. Another thing that I've heard from a few of our clients is like, the age of like the broadcast spot or the big ad is
Mm.
sort of like behind us. And so much of the content now that is created, especially B2B stuff, is like so focused on the subject matter expert and the customer and featuring those voices. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely would say so. I mean, I think given that we're in an age where, I look at my son, he's an avid fisherman. Everything he's learned from YouTube, and that is from experts, right? He doesn't want to hear from people who, oh, I was just trying this out. He wants to see exactly what they're doing and hear exactly all their different tips. And if you don't know, I think it does come across as dishonest now.
Totally. In your roles, have you ever done any influencer marketing or thought about doing it?
We have thought about doing it. I have never done it, and I will say that generally that's just because of the cost prohibitive piece around it, right? Most of the roles I've been in have been seed to C level, and so when you're thinking about the marketing budget for that, it gets a little bit tighter.
That's really interesting. When you have a very small budget, how do you think about video differently?
Yeah, I'd say this. I think you bifurcate it into three different groups, right? So there is thinking about what do we really need for a brand? What do we really need for campaigns? And then there's what are the different moments that we can do that are potentially more ad hoc that we would use on social media, etc. So, when I think about budget or I think about how we would use that, when you're first launching a company, I do think there is an important piece to kind of establish the brand that is worth giving that additional budget towards. On from that, then you're thinking about, what moments do we need what for engagement in some of the different campaigns, whether those are like 30-second explainers or something that we can send out. And then the last piece of that is just do it. Like you don't need a budget for that. That's just take your iPhone out and see what you can record and see what you can use.
And I imagine in that third bucket, it's maybe customer stories and SMEs explaining product, things like that.
Exactly, yeah, and I mean, I think there's so many tools now where it used to be that when you were doing product demos or, recordings for your customer success team, that is something where you would have to bring in somebody to do that editing. Now there are tools, you can do your own Zoom, record, put that up, right? So, that's really, I would say, what I would be expecting people to do or expecting anybody in the company to be comfortable to do, actually, not even owned by marketing.
You mentioned before a video that you didn't think was super successful. How do you measure in your mind the success of your videos? Are there KPIs or is it more like a qualitative set of measurements? How do you look at success?
Yeah, I would divide that really into the same buckets of brand and demand generation, right? Brand, I'm looking for clicks to watch. I'm watching for that full watching end to end as well. Where are people dropping out in the video? In that video, as an example, what was very interesting is I could see people all clearly got to the same mark and then they drop. And so for me, it was like, oh, we didn't actually get to the second part of our story. We messed up with not pulling that in tighter. For demand generation, at the end of the day, I'm looking at that CPL, cost per lead, and just understanding, how that overall asset is working within the campaign.
How do you think that over the course of your career as a marketer and, as a product person, how has the way that video is used, how has it changed?
I would say coming back to that idea that it was something very structured, right? It was something that was used really sparingly. When it was used, it was a full production and, everything had to be perfect. Now, I think video is used and should be used everywhere, right? I mean, we're looking at BDRs using them in email signatures, right? To say, hey, I saw you open my email, please pay attention again. I also think there is a understanding now, whereas it used to be like, nope, marketing owns the brand and you must follow this strict set of guidelines. You have to be comfortable with letting that go. At Doma, there was one of their sales managers who loved using TikTok. She loved using YouTube, and you watch it, and as a marketer, you're like slightly cringing, but then at the same time, it's like, no, she's going out there, she's creating videos, she's driving demand. Be comfortable with that. And I think you have to be comfortable giving it to anybody in your company within reason.
Yeah, and that makes me think back on what we were saying about like identifying the subject matter experts at your company that are
100%.
best with video. Because even though, yeah, maybe like they might not be doing their TikTok up to brand standards, if they have like a good voice for the product, they're at least representing your brand, like from the perspective of brand voice, like in a good way.
Yeah.
And people are much more forgiving of quality, if it's on TikTok.
Yeah. But even that said, I think, from a startup point of view, what that has enabled it to do is actually unleashed what is actually comfortable being on a site as well, right? And so what we're seeing videos that are full production value trying to look, more like the kind of skunk works. If you think about something like the Dollar Shave Club, right? I mean, that wasn't a big budget, but at the same time, it's, trying to emulate, hey, this is a cheaper brand coming through.
Totally. Another one of our clients actually was really interesting. She's made like Super Bowl ads before. And she was like, back then we would produce a Super Bowl ad and spend tons of money on it. It'd be the most precious thing. Now we pull our UGC content and cut it into a Super Bowl ad. It's like the inverse, right? It starts as UGC, it turns into a Super Bowl ad.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. I think that's the thing is there was a report I think that came out recently just thinking about people's attention spans and, they're decreasing year over year. Even if we're creating a longer video, how do we make moments within that are going to keep driving attention span?
What do you see as the biggest things coming up the pipe as it relates to video? Technologies or trends that you think are going to change everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. The first one is easy, just thinking about some of, the fake AI that's coming out with people and just understanding how that will be leveraged and what the legislation will be around some of the deep fake there. I definitely do think that that will change some of the capabilities that we're seeing. Generally, I would see video as being used more and more and more. There is a place for every type of content in campaigns. Some people are going to be reading, some people video, etc. But I do see that ultimately, if you're not using video in your campaigns in small snippets, I don't think they're going to be as successful because technology has enabled us to download and have that bandwidth now to watch videos really easily. People are going to want access to that, right? They're going to want to see that as part of your capabilities.
Right. It shouldn't just be one big old commercial and then they dive in the website and it's all text. It's like they see the commercial, they dive in the website, there's a video there. They dive further and there's another video.
Yes, 100%. And you should be sending those out. You should be driving that engagement back. I think back to, we are talking about case studies. And when I first started doing case studies, people were expecting these like 10-page, almost like mini, novellas around what the customer was doing. I don't think anybody ever read those page to page. Um, so when I think about like now, just having a single page is kind of what I think is the standard. But on from that, a 30-second video is going to do more good than that single page does at the same time. So, I would say when you're thinking about your campaigns, use both types, right? See which one is going to respond best for your customer.
Nice. Yeah. Those are all my questions. Is there anything you feel like we missed or any other thoughts that popped into your head as we talked?
Hmm. I mean, I think the key thing I would say is don't be scared of video. I know you and I have worked together on many projects, and I think the hard thing is always it's somewhere in your head what the brand should be. Like we were talking about the brand voice, etc. And I do always think that you understand what the brand is, and being able to work with a partner that can translate that visually is really important.
Well, thanks, Becky. I appreciate your time and your thoughts. And yeah, looking forward to collaborating again in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
Notes from Video Village is a project of SlowCloud. This episode was produced by Katie Bales with help from myself, Alexander Flores, Beiju Li Wang, Darissa Hicks, Jake Richard, and Dan Lichtenberg. Join us next time for an interview with Chief Marketing Officer Tiffany Fox-Quintana, and go to our website, slowclap.com, to listen to past episodes or read any episode as a transcript. Don't forget to follow us on Notes from Video Village on Spotify.